Hello and welcome to today's press conference with Nordic leaders and New Zealand's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Following the press conference, the webcast will be available on the Swedish government website, government.se.
No. Yes, that's right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this press conference. Today, my Nordic colleagues and I have had a joint meeting with the Foreign Minister, Winston Peters from New Zealand. And you are so welcome, Winston, to Stockholm. I'm very glad that you could join us here today. During today's meeting, we discussed our support for Ukraine and China's impact on regional security in the Indo-Pacific region and in Europe. Despite the great geographical distance, the Nordics and New Zealand stand close together in our shared values, security policies, and in our support for Ukraine. I particularly want to thank you, Winston, for New Zealand's part and support in Ukraine's case against Russia in the ICJ. It is crucial that we keep up the pressure on Russia and increase our support to Ukraine. We see that sanctions are working. Russia's economy is weaker than it looks. We must now go further, especially by targeting energy revenues and the Russian shadow fleet. And we need to make use of the immobilized Russian assets. Last week, Sweden and Ukraine signed a letter of intent, which marked an important step towards a possible export deal regarding Gripen fighter jets. We also need to look at financing options together with international partners. Building a strong Ukrainian air force would not just strengthen Ukraine, but European security as a whole. During today's meeting, we also discussed how China's enabling of Russia's war against Ukraine has a direct negative impact on the security of Europe and like-minded countries in the Indo-Pacific. I recently met with my counterpart in China, and I made it clear that China's position on Russia's aggression matters, and it affects how China is perceived in Europe. We are stronger when we act together, and I welcome New Zealand's interest in a deepening partnership with NATO. By deepening our cooperation with partners like New Zealand, we also increase our impact. Thank you very much.
Colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, it was a real pleasure to be part, as a New Zealand Minister, of this meeting today. We thank the Nordic Five and Finland as chair for the invitation. New Zealand has long-standing relationships with the Nordic countries, built upon strong shared values and a clear sense of common interests. New Zealand stands for open markets, the rule of law, democracy, human dignity, and universal human rights, principles and beliefs we share with our Nordic friends. In a world of shared challenges, small states can work together to amplify our voices and defend our values. Now, distance is no buffer. There is no opting out of the geopolitical realities that we face. For small states, it's imperative we maintain bonds with countries that share our values and our commitment to a rules-based international order. There are few countries who are more like-minded with New Zealand than the Nordic Five. We are clear-eyed that from the Indo-Pacific to Europe, we face the same challenges. We look forward to deepening cooperation across our foreign policy and trade agendas. New Zealand is announcing today our 33rd tranche of Russia sanctions. This includes a further 65 shadow fleet vessel designations, as well as other oil sector rated targets from Russia, Belarus, DPRK, and Iran. Now is not the time to ease the economic pressure on Russia that collective sanctions action can bring to bear. New Zealand is in this for as long as it takes. Now, on my opening comments, it is common for us to make those statements amongst others when diplomatic talk, but on this particular occasion, Our words have a very special significance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all. It's both a pleasure and an honor to stand here today with my Nordic friends and family, but not least with our friends from far away, from New Zealand. Today's meeting, they were both timely and meaningful. We discussed the situation in Ukraine, discussed regional security in the Arctic and in the Indo-Pacific. And these discussions, they were marked by a constructive exchange where we also reaffirmed the importance of respect for international law, support for international institutions, and the defense of a free and open international order. Our partnership is strengthened by our shared sense of responsibility and reinforced by our commitment to stand together for a safer and more resilient world. And we remain united in condemning Russia's unlawful war of aggression against Ukraine, a conflict that continues to inflict immense human suffering, and we fully support all efforts aimed at achieving a just and lasting peace. But of course, Ukraine, from my point of view and from our point of view, stands strong, stands proud and resolute in the face of a brutal aggressor that has violated international law and the very foundation of the rules-based international order, which is so important for all of us. So we stand, of course, with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Iceland also greatly values the strong and also the constructive partnership between the Nordic countries and New Zealand. We share deep commitments to democracy, to human rights and the rule of law, and a clear understanding that security in one region affects the security of others. Cooperation among like-minded nations is then essential to preserving peace and stability. And New Zealand's steadfast commitment, I have to underline that, to Ukraine reflects the fact that this is not just a matter for Europe's security and freedom, but for the whole world itself. So thank you for being with us today.
Yes, we had a very, very good meeting with Minister Winston Peters from New Zealand. The Nordic Five and New Zealand, there is quite a long geographical distance between the countries, but as we noticed in this discussion, there are very many things that unite us, our values on how we see the world. That is also embodied in the strong support to Ukraine that's visible in all these countries, the Nordics and in New Zealand, for obvious reasons. This is not a European war. It's a war that has global consequences. The way this world ends has repercussions on how we manage to preserve the rule-based world order. So that's why it's not only a European matter, it also matters in the Indo-Pacific region. As to Ukraine, it's important that the support is continuous, that it's strong, that it's both military support and humanitarian aid. It's important that we keep up the sanctions regime, that we widen it, that we make it deeper, that we take away the possibility for Russia to fund this brutal war with energy revenues. And here we have taken significant steps forward in the past week, but of course the work needs to continue. Then of course Russia has to make full reparations. We need to be able to use the frozen assets. We really hope that we can have a concrete proposal on this from the Commission shortly, and that we can move forward in that regard. As part of the sanctions package, of course, dealing with the Russian shadow fleet is essential. And it's also an environmental issue here in the Nordics, in the Baltic Sea. In the context of regional security, we noted in particular China's role, and as its activities has a global impact. And the way that China makes it possible for Russia to continue its war is, of course, a deep concern to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think the main word in international politics at the moment is uncertainty, because there is so much uncertainty of the way forward. There is today war on all continents. There is attacks on the multilateral cooperation. There is a lack of trust among many of the biggest countries in the world. But what is very certain is the way forward is to face this together with partners and friends. And therefore it's so important, this meeting that we have had here in Stockholm these days, for the Nordic Council and for the Nordic governments. And together we are standing together in many of these, and almost all of these issues. But not only the Nordic countries. We found partners all around the world, and therefore I'm very glad that New Zealand has been present here. And they not only be present here, they have been on a round trip in all the Nordic countries, and it was great also to have a common meeting. And I will especially underline New Zealand's very important voice related to Ukraine, because it's almost difficult to travel far away from Oslo, Stockholm or Kiev than to New Zealand. But still they have this very clear message that this is a clear violation of international law and the UN Charter. And in the end, this is about the security of all of us. It's the same international laws that are protecting the people in Ukraine, in Gaza, or Norway, or New Zealand. And therefore, this is definitely a matter of security, and therefore I'm very thankful for the very good meeting that we just had here in Stockholm.
Now we'll open up for questions. NRK.
Yes, hello, Joachim Rekstad from Norwegian National Broadcasting Corporation. I would like to address the first question to, I was about to say Prime Minister, sorry about that, Foreign Minister Peters. Well, one day, we'll see. I have two parts of this question. For the first, you're mentioning a strengthening of New Zealand's cooperation with the NATO countries. In what way can that be done? How can you strengthen it more without becoming actual members, which is by NATO Charter impossible at the moment? How can you actually strengthen that cooperation? And secondly, can you tell us a little bit about how you view the threat with hybrid attacks and shadow fleet in New Zealand? What have you seen as the consequences there? Because I think, to be honest, we only recently started developing an understanding of the magnitude of that here in the Nordic-Baltic region. Thank you very much.
Well, we're part of the IP4 relationship of late with NATO, and this is a very serious engagement. We, as I say, meet on an annualized basis. It is much closer now. Though if you go back in our history to the First World War, Second World War, well, we were there on day one. Way out in the far-flung parts of the world, we had our first foreign engagement 10 years after we were a democracy in South Africa in the Second Boer War in 1864, and we feel like we've been fighting a whole lot of people's wars in a lot of other countries for a long, long time. But in the case of Ukraine, we think it's absolutely critical that they are successful, and with our help and the help of Nordic countries and NATO, I think that a victory is still possible. I think it's essentially to be a victory. Otherwise, the encouragement of inaction with Crimea will go on. With Crimea first, then this latest 3-year-old attack, and now we're looking toward the future. What was the second question you asked?
I can repeat it very briefly.
Just that one part. Oh, the shadow fleet. Well, look, let me just say this. It's in the last 12 months that a missile was fired all the way out of China, right across the Pacific, without any warning to the Pacific nations, to the outskirts of the Sea of French Polynesia. It was an enormous shock to Pacific countries. It was for them a wake-up call. Of course, on our request as to what's going on here, it was painted as this, oh, we've been doing this for 42 years. Well, that's not true, that's simply. And then there was the engagement, military exercise in the Tasman Sea, without any warning to civilian aircraft, which was alarming in the extreme. So we've asked, what's going on here? Are you trying to work out whether the trajectory of armaments is different in the Southern Hemisphere than the Northern Hemisphere? You'll see the amusement on that question. But the real point is, China has been sort of flexing its muscles, not just in the Tasman Sea for the first time, off the coast of Manila, of the Philippines, Taiwan Sea. We have had major concerns, and we're part of security exercises there. So I suppose it's a case of pushing the boundaries and see what the responses are. Luckily, the responses look to be now of a measure capable of being a deterrence. And on the other question, it's in the 80s where the mass majority of my caucus want to be the Prime Minister, but on their terms. And I turned it down.
Thank you. Epoch Times.
Yes, also to the foreign minister. How do you, first of all, how do you navigate China being the biggest threat, but also the biggest trading partner? My other question is, does the prospect of a AUKUS membership for New Zealand look like right now? And how do you view the bigger security cooperation within the Pacific, within the Indo-Pacific, the coming years?
Well, even that some countries are questioning our involvement with AUKUS, which began in August of 2021, purely as a discussion as to whether we would, if invited in the future, be part of the second tranche of that, which was technical progress going forward. And nothing's changed, that's where we still are. But then, of course, we had China asking, well, what's going on here? And the answer is, well, it's our foreign policy, it's our business in this context. And we're not engaged in anything that is of concern because, as I say, we are not part of AUKUS 1, we are AUKUS 2. And AUKUS is a technical agreement if we should one day be invited. That's where things stand at the moment.
And how do you navigate that, the sort of trade, the trade dependency with China, and also in that light, how important is the free trade agreement with the EU?
Well, the free trade agreement with China has been more beneficial than one with the EU, but we still are very, very grateful for the EU one as well. The reason, of course, is that we are very careful because of our dependence on Chinese as our major, biggest trading deal. Just very much like Australia, we've come under the same pressure, so to speak. But then I suppose we need to be more acutely aware of what is the true state of the Chinese economy. What is the true state of as to where they're going? Are they as strong as we think they claim they might be? Or some of the information we're getting from outer space as to what's going on with the industries, and in terms of the lack of occupation of the 100 million, it was 100 million homes that they built, accommodation they built, and most of it's not occupied. So we think that the Chinese economy is more dependent in terms of our trading deal on us than it might be stressed or might be imaged. And I think the same goes for Australia.
Bloomberg.
Hi, Charlie Duxbury, Bloomberg. A question for the Swedish Foreign Minister. You mentioned there the potential deal to supply fighter jets to Ukraine. Have you any idea how Ukraine might fund those purchases, and could frozen Russian assets play any role in that? Thank you.
Well, you're pointing to the big question here, and it's something that has to be solved. I think there can be several ways of funding this, and we probably have to combine different ways. But I believe that the frozen assets should be a part of that, and it's also because it is such an important part of the security, not only of Ukraine, but also of Europe, and for a long time to come. And I'm quite frustrated, I must say, that we don't really have a plan for the long-term financing of Ukraine. And at this moment, we are relying very much upon the individual contributions by countries and their own budgets, and it's not fair. We, the Nordics, for instance, we provide a very big part of the total support this year. So if we want to have a sustainable way of financing, then we have to find another way. And I think the most fair one, also to the taxpayers, is taking the Russian assets. Thank you.
Any more questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you very much.